What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Superior Podcast. Back again with the boss man and our R&D manager, Angus, here to chat about suspension, all different types, that from IFS cars, leaf springs, coil springs. So I guess the best way to start is, where this business started, leaf springs.
Yeah, so it was our LN46 Hilux. Yep. Yeah, so we all know leaf springs don't work real good standard.
No, they don't, and that's where you look at a leaf spring is they are a very simple thing. They come from horse-drawn carts and trying to make someone's life comfortable with Cobb and Co or something, but the thing is trying to make leaf springs work in a full drive sense is it almost becomes not very simple. It's a very big task to make them work in a factory vehicle. If you're looking at just straight up like a Hilux, to make the front and rear work, it becomes quite a difficult task to make it happen.
You run into two headaches. People want it to work in terms of flex, and then they want it to hold a load often, and then they want them to actually ride smooth, which with a leaf spring, it's near on impossible, because leaf springs, you have friction issues, because if you put two leaves together, they rub, but you stack 6 of them, you've got 6 leaves through that compression and rebound phases, those phases there, rubbing, that friction is that's what makes a leaf harsher than a coil. So ride-wise, it can be hard to get them smooth. You can get them smoother than, say, factory, but you never get them bang on.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did the parabolics there for a while. When I started the business, they had EFS was bringing Fireflex suspension, which is, I'm pretty sure it was American, and they had for the Hilux, for the front of them in the solid axle leafy, like what we're talking about, they had this parabolic spring, and it worked unreal. But you had to have a fairly heavy vehicle. You had to have a winch. You had to be a diesel on that. Otherwise, the things just sat too high. Because even that setup they were sitting about 3 or 4 inch in height. Yeah. They worked well because I think they were just 2 leads, from what I recall.
Were they long? Did they need that long shackle?
They weren't any longer than a standard pack. What it was, very thick through where your U-bolts go around, and then it kind of come along and then tapered down skinnier, and then it went around to the eyes. And it was obviously calculated out properly for when it's flexing and all that. It's keeping even leverage through that leaf. Because if you think of a conventional leaf spring, you're starting off, whether you go top or bottom, so the top, we're talking about your main leaves, your wraps and all that, so your longest. Then they're basically done it like a pyramid stack. They're bringing them down smaller and smaller and smaller. And then to not get axle wrap, you put a load bearer in there.
Yeah. Well, that used to be one of the big tricks to get flex out of the Hiluxes when my mates and I first started wheeling the LN106s and that, take the retainer bolt out of that. You have that retainer. That was the first mod we all made, and it was like, hey, this made a difference, but you start to run into issues of the leaf starting to warp.
They start splaying out.
That's where you start learning what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, that's it. So that is it. It is a real big learning curve, and I think a lot of people in wheeling in Australia and that have learnt from trying to stop a leaf spring from splaying out and inverting and all sorts of stuff. Like there's so much to be done.
The one thing I see a lot of people do these days is they'll buy a car, full drive, their first car, and then they'll just get straight onto Facebook, say, what do I need for it? And they'll just start buying stuff on other people's advice. And I think a lot of the time they don't know why they're making certain mods. I think the one thing to do that we grew up doing is we took a stock Hilux and we were like, we're going to go full driving. And you're not going to be able to go up the Powerline track at Glasshouse or through some of the stuff in the Vic High Country or whatever, but at least we learnt what the limitations were. So okay, well, this is what's limiting us. How do we fix that? J-arms in the old Hiluxes and doing a rear up front conversion, and why does a drop shackle help? I think that's a good thing, is to step by step learn why you're making the modifications you are, because so many people just jump the gun on it.
Yeah, like me, I just bought a twin lock GQ Patrol and just went and drove everything. And that's why my car's wrecked now.
I was going to say, is that the GQ still sitting in your garage?
It's still. I did drive it before it went in the shed, but I've still got it.
I remember going to Glasshouse with you once before you decided to wreck it.
I remember him falling asleep. Remember Cruiser? Oh, you wouldn't have been there. Cruiser Park.
No, he wasn't.
Rotten drunk. Yeah. Pull up next to you. We're all drunk. And here he is on with his head against the glass window, asleep. And this is this is when we're all wheeling down a rocky creek, and he's just passed out.
Yeah, that's what. I wasn't even on the track then. That was when I drove down.
Well, you probably couldn't see the track.
Yeah, no, because Claw Gorge, it was on Claw Gorge at Cruiser, and you sort of weave down it, and I just went straight down the middle. This was way easier. No point steering, just drive down the centre.
You took the sand. You're soft.
It was me and Jeremy. Me and Jeremy, because Jeremy is in the paddock, we dropped off a rock, and I 100% thought it was gone. Like we just went burp. And I just stomped on it and drove it back down flat. But yeah.
So that must be like when you hit your head on the glass.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got a bit sidetracked there.
Yeah, but like, I suppose with the leaf springs, nowadays, because they were really common when I was, 16, 17, 18, we all had LM106 Hiluxes, Mick especially his old RNs and that. So like the knowledge of how to make the leaves worked it wasn't more readily available. We'd have to jump on forums. We were on Outer Limits and we were on Pirate and we were speaking of Trail Gear and Marlin Crawler in the US. But nowadays, I think people are getting confused because everyone's like, long shocks make flex, because everyone's been so used to coil sprung vehicles, which we'll touch on later, and live axles and that. Everyone just thinks long shocks make flex. So you can't just jam a long shock on a leaf spring, because at the end of the day, you're fixed at each end of that chassis. It doesn't matter how big a shock you put in there. The length of your leaf and your shackle arrangement is going to be 99% of the time your limiting factor. So don't just go for big shocks and then...
Well, sometimes you're just going to stuff yourself even more because a long shock, you've lost your up travel.
You lose your up travel. And up travels, that's definitely something that I see, especially in now day and age, of people don't understand. Up travel is amazing. If you have good up travel, it means you've got traction. If the wheel's getting forced upwards, the wheels are on the ground, they're pushing forward. It's a big thing. Keeping up travel in vehicles is definitely a very good thing.
Yeah, that was one of those things we learnt. Like, the key is you have your up, but you want a lower vehicle to start with. Like, we all, at first, were like, make this thing tall. We're pulling extra leaves out of leaf packs and stacking them to, you gain height by actually just pushing the diff away from the leaf pack, but then you were gaining rate, which was helping push everything up to a degree. We thought that was cool because we could fit 38-inch Mickeys on these cars. But then it was like, hang on a minute, this sucks. The lower we could get with a 35 and then just getting the drop out of it.
Yeah.
Which that applies to everything. It's
hard because
it's hard to make that.
A conventional car, you've got mud guards
Yeah.
to deal with.
That's exactly
panels
right.
And everything, so it's very hard. It's right on like a competition truck where you can make everything low and you can
Low and
get your
wide and
tyres
do whatever
still
you
tucking
want.
right up.
Yeah.
A conventional car is extremely hard to do that with.
It's like my car now with going to like coilovers and hydro bumps and getting rid of the conventional coil and shock. I've been able to gain very minimal, but I think about 20 more mil up travel than it did with the conventional setup and the Nissan bump stops and that sort of thing.
Tyres aren't eating anything?
No, I'm managed to, with the way I've angled the coilovers and everything like that, I've got about 10 mil of clearance, which they probably will hit at some point when the tyres are deflated and that sort of thing.
When you start smashing bump pads?
Yeah, exactly. But doing that, I've done it what I think is the best possible way I've been able to with inside the guards. With still the guards are cut, everything like that. In a street car, you can't do that. You can't play with it as much to make it still within, so you're not getting pinned by the cops.
I guess the thing with leaf springs is as well, your vehicle is a big part of it. Like you have your old, we've touched on them a lot already, the old Hiluxes, leaf front, leaf rear, that's how they were. Nowadays, 99% of your IFS utes are a leaf rear, except for the NP300. So, and that's a different behaviour and arrangement to what the front end of any leaf vehicle ever was. And then your leaf springs between, say, a 79 series, 76 and a GU ute leafy, they're so much heftier than what your IFS utes are. Like you mentioned the parabolics, the BT50s and D-Maxes and Rangers are coming with parabolic leaves from factory now.
Yeah.
Make them ride nice like a car, but yeah, to make that work, like a lot of people go, I'm going to go an upgraded leaf spring, they lose that ride quality, like this is terrible. It's like you've gone from a factory parabolic and that's just unfortunately the nature of the beast.
Yeah, and that's the thing, especially, you definitely see it more in leaf sprung vehicles, is if you go out and buy a 300 kg leaf spring and don't have 300 kgs in it, it's gonna be very, very harsh.
Yeah, and again, that's that friction. Like a coil, a 300 kilo load rated coil that's not loaded to 300 kilos is going to be harsh, but it's not going to be generally not too unbearable. But a 300 kilo leaf with nothing in it is pretty garbage.
It's a lot more harsh. And it becomes down to, like, you look at still, like when you go back again to old Hiluxes, probably some of the most capable vehicles in the world to this day are still leaf sprung Hiluxes. Like, there's some awesome cars out there that guys
see them racing hammers.
Yeah, like there's literally guys still racing hammers on leaf sprung cars. Some of the rock crawlers that a lot of guys still have in, like New South Wales here in Australia, there's some awesome leaf sprung cars that are extremely capable. But those guys have put a lot of work in there. That's why patrols became so popular when towards the sort of end of that 90s, where the GU started coming out and GQs became more options available for modifying. It's so much easier to just get your GQ, your GU, your 80 series and that to flex with just going to a bigger shock.
The thing is with any leaf spring, the spring's a part of it, but then and your shocks, but you know your shackle arrangement is huge. Like you look at, we do the extended shackles, the 50mm extended shackles, which to most people like that's just a cheap, quick way to get lift. You know, a couple $100, I'll get an extra inch of lift out of the back of the car or the front, whichever way you're using them. But you're also effectively lengthening the spring. You're not, but it's able to come further away from the chassis, so you're going to get more down, which helps. So, and then obviously the drop shackles, which would have been touched on in the the episode with Mick. You know, the whole thing that started the company. The drop shackle allows you to maximise them even more, and then you know. But to maximise a drop shackle, you need a longer leaf, realistically.
What I've seen over the years, they've changed. There's been a lot of different shackle designs to try and make leaf springs work. I remember when I had the Hilux, they had, like, Outer Limits was a big thing, all the boys on that, and they were very set in their ways, and they had the really long shackles. Like, we're talking, some of them were 10, 12 inches
350
long.
plate steel with nothing in between
Absolutely
them.
ridiculous. Like, the stupidest thing I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
Because logically thinking of it, you've got a leaf spring that's, say, whatever, we'll go a metre here. It's got a camber in it that preset in it. So that's what it is. Like basically a shackle this long hanging on the back. So you've made a longer spring to meet that shackle. The problem is when that comes to go down that suspension, that arc of that leaf spring is that arc.
It's done.
So having a shackle this long doesn't relate to that pivot point here swinging around and this spring swinging around, and you're now getting this massive amount more travel.
And me and the boys are guilty of that.
It was all a bit of a piss take, some of the shit the guys were doing, but
we did that. We did the big plate shackles.
A lot of people did. A lot of people did it,
Yeah.
but when you looked at it, it didn't make that much difference. Or you had, say, if you got a really flat leaf spring, which a lot of them did, they put the longer flat spring in the front. Same thing, big long shackle. It's the same thing. This flat piece of steel is trying to flex in a swinging arc on droop.
By the pin.
And now you've got this other radius here trying to swing this shackle. Doesn't work, whereas that's why the drop shackle worked so well.
Yeah,
because it had the double pivot points, so it actually helped it
and it wasn't
come down
long.
further.
It wasn't a full long.
No, well, see, the good thing about the drop shackle was you had your main pivot point, and then it had the open pivot point. And the main pivot point could swing up, hit the chassis, and then the second one could come open. So it would allow that spring to work in its natural arc.
Like a two-stage.
Yeah, so it was a lot better. We get a lot of heat from a lot of people on Outer Limits because everyone's an expert. Oh, that's all shit. You got to have these big long shackles. And they had the banana shackles.
Around those two.
My opinion is banana shackles weren't anything fantastic because you can put whatever curve you want, whatever shape you want to the banana shackle. It's still point to point. So you make the thing to go to South Australia and back. Like, who cares? It's still point to point. And I always thought that was a piss take too, but same thing, people were set in their ways.
We ran them for clearance on a couple of
clearance. It was a
solid
good thing
axle
for
swaps and
good thing for clearance.
Yeah, because you could have a point in your chassis, a long leaf, and you know you might have the vehicle we had on was a cab mount issue, so it was like, well, we've got this banana shackle, and all that was the banana shackle's pure job there was just to clear that,
get away from the chassis or whatever.
The cabinet,
That's the only advantage I could ever see with them. Apart from that, I think they're a joke.
Yeah, and that's, again, like we spoke about the three-way pivoting of those drop shackles as well, is allowing to that spring, if you're chasing that super big flex, to twist out, splay out a bit to chase that extra travel again.
But just bolting a drop shackle into into any vehicle, into an old Hilux, whatever, I mean, that's going to make a difference, but to really make the difference, long leaves, we refer to as inverted shocks, your shock bars, you know, there's a lot of supporting mods, and if you're mucking around in Hiluxes and you're starting to muck around things like that and up the front, and you get
high steer,
like
everything.
It's a lot of work, but
I think in the rear end, I think if we were to give someone an idea on how to get their leaf springs flexing, I think the main thing is just have your leaf spring as light as you can.
Light and long.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like if you're not a person who's going to start chopping off shackle mounts or that, if you've just got whatever, say you've got whichever vehicle we're going to talk about, Hilux, leaf spring rear end or whatever like that, and you're going, well, I want to get more flex, just don't go heavier than what you need.
Well, the next gen Ranger we had at work for a while, the work up, that just had some nice light leaves in the back, like 0 to 100 kilo, nothing to them. It's shackle in the back, extended shackle, and that thing dropped a wheel pretty well for a factory arrangement in terms of shock mounting and leaf positioning and that without having to modify anything. But again, go out and wheel that car stock and then do that and go, oh, that's why that's made a difference. Don't just go buy a car and go, I need drop shackles and I need hoops and I need inverter bars straight away and AU Falcon wagon leaf springs, because without knowing the gains, it's not. I think a lot of people learn to drive better in a stock car too.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Driving a stock car and learning where your limitations are, and even just it comes to wheel placement, anything is driving. It's learning to full drive in a stock car is fantastic. Like learning how to. That was one thing. Even though I did buy an extremely capable car, my old man always, because I bought my car from my old man, always taught me, don't turn your lockers on until you're stuck.
Lockers are to get out of trouble, not into trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
You use them to get in.
The other way.
I
just turn them on.
I know. I've been in the car, but
When you're racing, lockers straight on.
Lockers straight on. But that was something that I was told as well. It's like lockers get you out of trouble. If you use it to get you into trouble, what are you using to get out? That's
Winch.
your insurance policy. Yeah, if you're lucky enough to afford one.
Yeah, my winch burnt out the first time I tried to use it. We stayed in the shed from then on.
We all had Tigers 11 winches back then.
Oh, yeah, they were, weren't they? Yeah.
They were questionable whether they'd work or not.
My Warn, I tried to recover someone at Cruiser and the internal brake broke and the solenoid burnt out, so I couldn't hold their car. It just pulled the winch cable out the weight of their car, and then I couldn't spool it back in because the solenoid burnt out.
So you drove home with the rope wrapped around the bar like every other idiot.
We all used to do that. It used to be steel cable back then.
It's quick and easy to get off. It's like it's
Having
not.
any stinger bar.
That's a mod I'd like to see come back, stingers. I miss
Yeah, I don't know if they will. I think Transport.
Yeah, I think
Transport put an end to that one. And exo cages. That they were referred to as roof racks.
Heavy duty roof.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it was a ladder rack.
Roof
Yeah,
basket.
that was it always. Why is your roof basket welded to your chassis?
Yeah, it's heavy duty. But like that leaf arrangement, was big for Toyota for a long time. But Nissan with the D21, D22 Navaras, Mitsubishi, the MKs, all the Tritons, all the way through all that, they were a torsion bar front.
Yeah.
And that was an even bigger headache to work with. Torsion bars are in a four drive. I mean, Chrysler were using those in the 60s in street cars. I don't know why.
It never stayed that popular. Like
torsion bars. No, it was that sort of 2000 to 2005.
It was
where
almost
really
like
popular.
a period of, we need our vehicles to be more like a passenger vehicle, our four drives, like these manufacturers. We want them to ride well. Torsion bars, it's quick and easy to package. Toyota did it in the 100 series. That was it.
Yeah.
But, it was...
On the Hilux.
Oh, the Hilux, yeah, sorry. But
they were fizzers.
They fizzed.
As a four drive, they were...
Yeah.
It
It was so limited by what you could do.
It was almost like a bridge just between Leaf technology and getting the coilover IFS fronts out there. So, there's not a lot of torsion bar four drives out there for people to muck around with. If you have got an old Hilux or something, I mean, your Leaf rear, we've touched on that, but when you get to that torsion bar front,
throw it in the bin.
there's nothing you can do. Horses for courses. If you're just belting up Fraser Island with 25 fishing rods on the swag and Esky beer, that's the car for it.
Yeah, the most reliable thing you'll ever buy.
If you want to go to Glasshouse and try and poke along the power line track, just don't even, because you've got such limited wheel travel.
Yeah.
They're just,
And I guess, and coming into that as well, like with torsion bar, IFS alone, even right up to now with brand new cars, is so limited, especially in Australia because of our laws and how much we can modify cars.
Yeah.
All IFS cars run into some big limitations with CV joints, the diff design in a lot of them being that the diff is so wide, you run into a short axle, so you're using your working angles of your CV through very limited suspension travel. But then the chassis as well. You can't, like you look at, say, if we're getting right deep into it, a trophy truck that's full drive, the chassis where the diff is this wide, and the control arms are this long. So you end up with massive amounts of wheel travel. What we have here in our laws, you can't cut the chassis away, so the only way to make a IFS car flex more in the front is make it wider.
Which the laws don't allow.
Which then, you run into, you've got 50 millimetres overall, you can widen it.
And we've worked that out as young blokes, and we were like, let's do a solid axle swap, which seems like a great idea. It's like, I'm going to put a solid axle under the front on leaf springs, and then it's like, why don't you just buy a Hilux? Why are you doing this to a Navara? Could have just bought a Leaf Hilux, but that has its limitations too. I mean, depending whether you go coils and radius arms or how you do it, but it's not the greatest.
You can make them work. You usually end up with a height, like everyone talks about keeping your car low and all that, but then they go and do a solid axle swap. You can't have a low solid axle swap car.
No, because that chassis. Yeah, because from the firewall forward to the radiator support cross member, I mean, they're very flat because IFS cars don't need to move. You don't have a solid diff moving up there. So look at a Leaf Hilux, she's got a big raise
control, anything like that.
All the IFS cars are pretty flat, and that's what we found out. We're like, we'll jam this custom-made diff housing under this Navara, and bang, we put the leaves on it, and we looked at it, we're like, oh, got like 40 mil up travel.
Yeah, you sort of
And it was still a long way off the
you
ground.
limit your up travel, and you end up with a reasonably high truck. Which,
Exactly.
if that's what, if you don't care about that, good and well, solid axle is a cool swap. But if you're the person who wants a low car, and heaps of up travel, probably not the best choice for you.
And those issues aren't isolated to torsion bar IFS front. All IFS fronts
that's
pretty much like that.
It's brand new cars now.
Then when you get to these newer cars, you run into some legality issues. I mean, back when we did it to those old torsion bar cars, Paul would come in, you get a mod plate. Someone would mod plate it for you, it was okay. But nowadays with your ESC systems and your ABS systems and building a housing that factors that in, but then you crash. I mean, those IFS front ends are built to cave a specific way in an accident and absorb an impact, because the theory of my car's really strong, I can run into shit and my radiator's not going to move 10 mil, that's not what you want. You want the car to actually crumple, because that's what absorbs it. Because if that doesn't, your body absorbs it. So that's why they have the laws saying, you basically a solid axle swap's really not going to get across the line these days.
When we did that X-Track SSM, we looked at doing a solid axle conversion for the N80s. And we went down, we got all the quoting done, we did all the R&D and all that, and we ended up not worrying about it. It was just a hard thing to do with all your, like you say, all your safety side of stuff. To be able to put a car out there that's so vastly modified and still be able to theoretically perform the same in a crash. And it never will.
That's exactly it. Like the X-Track, I think it's one of the coolest builds out there for a 100% street legal car in Australia to have long travel IFS. I think it's awesome. I love the X-Track, especially that one we built for the red one for motorculture. I think it's just an awesome car. But again, that's what you've got to go down the route to get an IFS car to work and be usable street driven in Australia.
Because that basically had, anyone that owns a 2005 onwards Hilux would know a 4-inch lift in the front of those is actually pretty limiting. It's not great. So you want to be around a 3. That was the beauty of that X-Track, because she was wide. In terms of the angles the CVs were running on, was equivalent to a 3, same as a steering rack. It wasn't like a 4 or 5-inch lift. The guard mod and the wider wheels.
I reckon it would have even been better than that. I reckon it would have been more about a 2-inch lift. It was the running angles. It was pretty good.
The angles were fantastic.
Because you're about 5 inches wider aside. I think you're at 11 and a half overall. But you're probably, in your UCAs, you're probably somewhat 4.5, 5 inches aside.
Well, that's what like, fair bit. Like I'm sitting here, the way I'm facing, we've got it printed up on the wall, and you can see the CV in there, and that's just a photo that's been drawn over. But it's the CV, and that's great.
The big thing is CVs. A lot of people mention CVs over and over with IFS cars, but CV and steering rack, you've got to consider that steering rack, and that's one of the issues the new BT50 D-Max platform has is the bump steer issue. There's the rack's just not in a great spot, and the higher you lift that car, the worse that actually becomes. Your CV angle in those vehicles can be a problem, but it's not going to be the biggest problem. The biggest problem you're going to run into is that bump steer, and the only way to fix that geometry is to move the rack.
Have they corrected it in the newer models?
They claim that they have corrected the steering spindle, so they've left the rack the way it is, but they've relocated the rack mounting point. Similar to the factory's pretty much done what Super Pro worked out 2 years ago, and what Super Pro have been marketing. But at the end of the day, that's going to help a bit now, because your racks come up a bit flatter. So now when you lift that particular vehicle, but that's just one example, but all the IFS cars, you lift it, you might be happy with your CV angle. I'm going to bung a diff drop in her as well, but then there's a lot of challenges.
You're not touching your rack.
Exactly. The racks.
And you get away with it in a lot of cars, but there are things to consider.
That's exactly right. And that's what becomes those limiting factors in, like we look at, say, the SSMs we do for the Hiluxes and that sort of thing. We engineer them, test them, everything like that with the biggest lift and everything that we can. But then when talking to customers, we bring them back down and say, hey, this is going to perform better. We've got the approval, so we can give you the biggest, baddest car there is, but we need to make sure that you enjoy driving the car as well.
And you don't want your CVs to blow apart and aftermarket CVs don't help that, but I remember
A
driving.
lot of the times aftermarket CVs are worse.
Worse,
Yeah,
exactly.
we put some in your 200. We didn't even make it
They
to
were
Cruiser
rubbish.
Park and they exploded. I mean, that was...
Well, I remember I was towing. I had the race car on the trail. I was probably, like, it was illegal. I was probably 4 tonne or more on the thing. It was fairly heavy, and I remember going up the dirt road up to the campground up there.
Yeah.
And obviously the weight come off, lifted the front end up a bit. It was already high. It was already like probably 4-inch lift or something. But then it was probably at max with all the weight going over the big ruts and that were across the creek. Yeah, it blew the CV.
That happened in the Ranger too. We're coming out
Yeah,
of the park. I followed you in the car,
Yeah.
the Ultra 4, and we're
It's
driving
the
up. and
unloading that is a problem.
the front end just exploded. One CV just exit the chat.
and
So
like all CVs, you don't know. Everyone used to go, oh, I blew my CV and I wasn't doing anything wrong. It's like it's irrelevant when you broke it. It's what did you do the
prior
last
to
3 drives before it,
Exactly
where you're on
right,
a limited
yeah.
banging
Yeah,
it, or
like,
and
yeah,
that's what cracked it.
Like, yeah, you crack, like, say, look at it, a patrol, like, you crack that in a race and it may last
still hold
you
together.
another three weeks, and
wouldn't
that,
know.
then you're just at one time, you decide to turn full lock and that wheel spins at that little bit slower or a little bit faster, it goes punk.
well, how many times did you go full drive? I mean, this would have to have happened in your GQ because the CVs are tiny.
Never
but
broken one, mate.
The amount of times
Never
you
broken
go
one.
out full driving and then let's swing by the dag pub. Let's go by the pub and have a beer, and then you actually steer like full right hand lock, and you
Oh, that was scary.
Oh,
When you'd pull out, I remember one time I pulled out from Glasshouse night up there wheeling pretty hard and come out, went to turn, and the steering just locked up.
Yeah.
But you thought it was a broken CV in there.
But just held it.
And yeah, once you've turned it, it's just let go
Yeah.
and just locked up on that angle.
That's always a nervous drive, the first one after a trip. I remember in my 60 series, I had my little brother with me. He was pretty young then, and we left Jan Owen Hills, and I was like, right, and we're off, and we're flying out of Jan Owen, 60 k's, 65 k's, trying to get up to speed because it was a 2H, but I hit a bump, and she just did the most violent head shake I've ever experienced in a car, and I stopped, and he looked at me, and brother goes, what was that? I was like, I don't know, and I crawled under, and I couldn't see anything wrong, so I took off again, and I couldn't figure out what it was, and I drove 60 k's an hour the whole way from Jan Owen back to Brisbane, did it again on the Jindalee Bridge. I worked out the U-bolts had come loose. So I just cranked the U-bolts up. I couldn't tell that they were loose because they weren't moving, so I was like, they're fine. Yeah. But that first drive out after something like that sucks.
That's the thing with, like, what a lot of people don't realise is you get under your car and you're looking for something that's broken, you're hanging off it, you're swinging off, you're like, oh, the rod ends seem fine, the bushes seem fine. You're not 3 tonnes, like your car's going to be putting 3 tonne into that bush that makes it head shake and that sort of thing. There's lots of things that can change how a car handles
really
very
wrong.
quickly.
Yeah, doesn't take a lot. And then I suppose, well, if your Patrol never broke a CV, it's because she's live axle, not independent front.
Yeah.
And live axles, you get them in leaf and coil arrangements, but it's a fantastic setup.
And that's where the Patrols became so popular. We talk about Leafs, how they have that friction. Coils don't. Obviously, the coils aren't touching the whole way through their height. So there's lots more things without going into a million details about how coil springs are made and winds and that sort of thing.
Nah.
The easiest way to explain why a coil works so well is, I guess, you go to like a kid's park. Coils have no lateral support.
They're dangerous.
Exactly. You sit in, but like that's how a coil spring works in a car. Is you can
go
lean
every way
and
you
pull.
want.
It doesn't matter which way there's load.
It hasn't got resistance anywhere, really.
There's no resistance in it.
Until you bind a coil, there's no resistance.
Yeah.
Until your head hits the ground.
And then you can't get out of it.
But and that's where control arms come into it. And again, that is the most in-depth conversation you can have about geometry and that, and it's just simply it's too much to talk about when you're talking about it. But that's where Patrols work so well, or an 80 series or anything, where you look at the rear end of them, they're 5-link from factory. 5 links allow that suspension to just travel and
I think it's fair to argue the
wants.
Toyotas do it better. I mean, realistically, to make a Patrol back end work well,
Yeah, but
you need a long arm.
then Superior beat Toyota in the rear end.
We did.
We did the coil.
We did. Well, we did beat Toyota, but you look at you get your 80 series.
I was referring to 79.
Well, that too. But if you compare 80 to GQ, to make a GQ work optimally and not pull do your rear steer issues. Long arms, I mean, Toyota, you don't need to do that mod. And to make the front of a Patrol nice and comfy to drive and not destroy bushes, hybrids, which is a cruiser arm. So I think Toyota got the upper hand.
Toyotas were better in the car handling better. Like They had basically a drop box in some respect on the front radius arm.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
That
right,
helped
yep.
the steering a
But
lot.
they've all got their pros and cons. I know that there's some listeners sitting there right now screaming at their stereo that an 80 series is a bucket of junk, and there's some cruiser guys out there saying patrols are rubbish. You know, big diffs, small diffs,
Yeah.
this diff, that diff. I mean, they all have their pros and cons. Horses for courses.
Yeah, exactly right. Like an 80 series, like if you look 90s model to 90s model, an 80 series is tenfold comfier than a GQ.
It's ahead,
but I'm taking a GQ every day.
At the end of the day, what you're looking at,
Same.
what you're looking at in that era of car is live axle wagons or single cab utes. We didn't get dual cabs in those things with full coil, and you know, 5-link rear. You know, your radius arms in the front with your panhard, your lateral locating link. Really simple, awesome vehicles to modify. I mean, they're the dream. Every young kid out there that started at work in the last 2 years, every 16, 17-year-old kid who's about to leave school or at school, oh mate, what, you got a car yet? No, I'm still on my learners. Or what are you saving up for? Oh, I want an 80 series. Or I want a GQ. Or I want a GU. Or I got an RD28 GQ. But you know, these kids, they all want those cars because they're easy to mod, they're comfy, they do everything you want them to. I mean, they're kind of the pinnacle.
Yeah, and that's what I think drove those cars to be so good is like we can set them up through work and get them to flex, drive nice, and do everything. So yeah, if one day you just go, I'm going to the Cape, you can just jump in your patrol, put all your camping gear in, and yeah, that car's still set up to go to Glasshouse and drive all the tough tracks, but you can just jump in and go up the Cape and that sort of thing. Sometimes where you look at lease-run cars and that, where you're like, ooh, putting a ton of camping gear in the back of this and making it flex.
I think lease rings work a bit better for a more consistent weight.
Yeah, definitely.
I think then you can get away with coils. Because say coils, if someone said they want to have a car that carries heaps of weight, one day, nothing the next, wants to flex off-road, wants to be comfortable. That's what everyone says to us. That's 99% of the phone calls.
That's exactly
It's got to do
right.
every single thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's Coil Springs and most probably with an airbag inside the coil spring.
Exactly.
And it's going to do all those things. Whereas if we go a leaf spring direction, then if we're going to carry heaps of weight in it, you're going to probably go an airbag setup.
Yep.
The problem is leaf springs have got their own inherent problem with an airbag system because they fix top and bottom chassis to diff. Yeah. So they're going to limit your travel straight up.
Yeah,
100%.
Whereas the coil spring airbag within the coil,
It
doesn't
factor
restrict
not
it.
the bag.
Exactly
though,
right.
so it's still
Yeah.
a shot.
That's, I guess, one huge thing why coil springs are so much better for that scenario. If you want a bit of everything,
Yeah, they're more versatile.
yeah,
It's
more
hard.
versatile.
Yeah, you've got to really assess what you want to do with the vehicle. But at the end of it, once you've made that decision, like I said, if you're a 17-year-old kid or even a 45-year-old bloke who's gone out and bought a stock 80 or a DX or a stock GQ, go and find some easy tracks and start driving it and find out what is limiting you. Okay, I drove into these little wombat holes and I got wheel spin. It'd be cool if my wheel would touch the ground. I'll go a bit bigger tyre. And you can talk to people and go, you need long shocks to get that diff down there, and then you need long brake lines. Then you need retainers to keep the coils in place, and you need drop-out cones. You can be told all that, but I think a really good move is to learn physically yourself why you need to do those mods. Because then when you're coming into buying the parts, you're like, yep, I'm buying the thing I know I need.
Yeah, exactly right.
You know,
yeah.
and staff at Superior and everywhere, they can help you walk through that process. Be like, okay, well, this is what you need, this is what you need. But I think you've got to wheel the cars through every step of the modification. Don't just... It's a great idea to go to GQ and then go, I need a 4-inch Hyperflex kit with long arms.
Yeah.
2.5s and I'm off to the Cape. That'll work for you. Yeah. But you're probably not going to understand why all the stuff that you've put in there's in there.
Exactly, and that's where you're looking at Coil Spring and we talk about the front end of radius arms. Radius arms, whilst they have a massive amount of control over the front end, they are also then become your limiting factor when you're looking at flex, especially like if you're looking at, say, like a Nissan and a Land Rover with a pin at the back of it, that's just essentially a single bolt holding the back of that arm. You are always going to run into a limiting factor of how much that's going to flex.
Yeah, well, that pin's in a bush in a sleeve, so it's just going to stop.
Yeah, but don't think that's not your main reason.
No, that's exactly...
It's your front bushes that's more
the
the
rear
biggest
bushes
problem.
tend to just tear out. But your front
you'll
bush,
just chop them out.
Yeah, exactly.
that's
You're going to
separation
chop
of the
them out
problem.
really quick, and then you look at your separation of your bushes that are in a stock standard car, how Nissan and Toyota do it. I think Toyota have a little bit
Toyota's
less.
shorter.
Yeah, they got a little bit less
Toyota are
separation.
closer. And Nissan, Land Rover are closer again, aren't they? And that's
And you
This
can
is a
see them
long way
off road.
apart.
You can see they work better, and that was why we did the Superflex and
Exactly.
Hyperflex.
Yeah, you've got to
them
come
closer
into
again.
Yeah, you make them in closer. You lessen that bind point between those bushes, and then it allows you to continue to flex. And then if you get into start chatting with Greg about who designed it and that originally, the math that's gone into it with Greg, he gave me a really, like, he drew everything out in that probably a couple of months ago now, and seeing of where he's designed those bushes to bind and bring control back in to not have the car just wander and flop and
they're
carry
probably the
on.
best compensation in every direction possible.
Yeah.
You could get more of one aspect of handling, you're going to lose another, or if you want to gain here, you're going to lose a bit here. They're kind of the best, I suppose. Compromise isn't the word because they're achieving
they're
a
a
lot,
compromise
but they are.
to work a bit of everything. Where like you can get more flex out of the front end. You can go
Easy.
a 5-link.
Yeah,
You can go
you go
an
3-link.
X-link.
Yep.
But they lose that drivability in some aspect to what a Superflex or a Hyperflex would.
Yeah.
But it's horses for courses.
That's
What are you after? You're after
Yeah.
the most. You ring us up and say, hey, I want the most flex I can ever get. Well, then we're not going to go, say, a Superflex.
Yeah.
You're going to go...
Go
And at the end of the
Yeah,
day, like,
5-link.
Yeah,
people
yes.
are going to say, your radius arm's not your limiting factor, your shock length is. If you have a big shock, you're going to get more travel, but yeah, okay,
So many
on a
things.
hoist,
Yeah.
it's going to drop more. But the problem is in the real world, when you're out there actually full driving and that diff is trying to drop, you could have 15 inches of wheel travel in that, shaft travel in that shock absorber, but once that all starts to bind up and you hit your bump stop on this side because you've got a big tyre and it's not pushing down, your car's starting to lurch and you're going through wombat holes like this, whereas with those arms, and they have their application definitely, or they're, where you want to use them, where if it's a daily work truck, probably not. But that's where your body's going to stay level. I mean, that's going to help with control too. I mean, if you've been a full drive doing this, up a track, that sucks.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Everything's falling around. Your beers are getting shaken up in the fridge. It's no good. So you can have long shocks, but you need that mod to go with it to really maximise it. And that's where those arms.
Yeah, your Hyperflex and Superflex too, some people may not realise, but you gain it in up travel more than down travel.
Yes,
really
that
notice
is
it
that
that
is
way.
a big point.
Yeah, because on your down travel, you still got your bushes there. You still got resistance. Because if people can understand when the diff's trying to articulate it, it's trying to basically like twist everything.
Yeah,
as
exactly.
So it sort of helps a lot.
With your up travel.
Yeah. You're better off, like if you are going to go for Superflex or Hyperflex, just make sure that you can allow for that up travel. If you don't have a tyre that's big enough to actually, if your tyre's too big and
you
your
haven't got
guards
the
aren't
bumps
big
in
enough,
play.
well, there's probably no point chasing extra up travel. Because you're not going to be able
It's
to
not
get
gonna
it.
benefit you
So
that
just
much.
make sure when you go and put Hyperflex, Superflex, whatever in it, you can make the whole package work.
If you're trying to put a 40-inch tyre on a road-going GQ and you're bumping it to buggery to stop that tyre from catching into that guard, I guarantee you at a 4-inch lift, you're pretty much sitting on bump anyway.
And it's not going to achieve much
not gonna work.
changing it.
Yeah.
Like that particular direction, you'd be better off going a 5-link.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
have it bumped on up travel and get it on down travel. But like you said earlier, up travel is the key to getting traction.
Exactly right.
Not down. Down travel just stops you rolling on your roof.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't help much when it's got no weight on that wheel, just spinning in the gully.
Yeah.
You need that weight.
Yeah, definitely. You've got to have all of the, and that's again, it comes into like it's such an in-depth where you're talking about how to set up a full vehicle. Like even with your where you look at like coming into Superflex sway bars with your coil sprung cars. Obviously, again, you take your sway bars out of a coil sprung car, it's a completely different animal to a leaf sprung car with no sway bars. Like my car was woeful to drive with no sway bars. You go and put a set of sway bars in. And a lot of people, especially like where you look at your Superflex sway bars or getting any sway bar to work properly and not be the limiting factor, like a Nissan sway bar especially, like Toyotas are nowhere near as short as a Nissan sway bar. The arms that come forward to the chassis or back to the chassis away from your diffs are very, very short
It's
in
just
Nissan
another
control.
con in that Nissan column, isn't it?
And shush. But you get, by lengthening that, you gain, the sway bar doesn't become a limiting factor anymore, but you still gain the control of a sway bar.
Yeah.
And sway bars, when they're not the limiting factor, they're not going to stop limit. They're going to slow your suspension travel down and slow the vehicle's roll down. So when you drive into a hole, you're going to stop that lurch of the car going back and forth, and then it's going to force the wheel to drop down into the hole rather than the whole car leaning over that way. And yeah, like sway bars are a great thing to have in a car, and having correctly set up sway bars can be a massive benefit to a vehicle off-road,
Like
not
obviously,
just on-road.
lifting of four-wheel drive, especially a live axle one, sway bar extension's great, helps, but in that Nissan application, those Superflex sway bars, and we can put some images up during this chat, but when you look at long link on a factory one and then a long link on an extended sway bar, and you can see very quickly how it is that that's no longer going to be limiting the down travel. But yeah, like you said, with a heavier bar in play there as well, you're helping control everything.
Yeah, you can basically you can get the same amount of resistance that say factory has, or more or less, whatever you're trying to achieve. But with the longer length of the arm, you're allowing more down travel.
Yeah, exactly.
Up travel.
Yeah, up travel. Yeah. Anyway,
Front
sway
end
bars. A lot of people think just like got me patrol, pull the sway bars out. It's going to be way better, and it's a bigger picture. Essentially, you've got to look at
It'll flex better.
It'll flex better.
better.
The flex great if you take the front radius arm bolt out too. It doesn't make it safe.
We never said that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Cut that out. No, but yeah, you unhooking your sway bar. I mean, everyone would see videos on Facebook and YouTube of some guy in a GU going around a roundabout, the front wheel this far off the ground.
I think I seen one the other
Guess
night.
what? There's no sway bars, and that looks like fun and a good time when you got your five mates in the back and it's hilarious and you're on your way out for a dinner and it's a laugh. Right up until you have to do an emergency maneuver to avoid a deer standing in the middle of the road or a small child, and your car just topples because you've got no roll resistance. It's just those springs are just unloading and it's like laters.
Yeah,
they just
exactly
go.
right.
So you really, if you want to be a responsible vehicle owner and not be a yob, sway bars.
Yeah,
you need that
definitely,
sway bars in.
especially if you've got a rooftop tent.
Rooftop tents.
If you want to ruin your vehicle's handling characteristics,
Nothing has made the job of a suspension salesperson harder in the last 10 years than rooftop tents. I mean, those initial rooftop tents, those soft ones,
Weren't
they
too bad.
sucked a bit. They were probably worse for fuel economy than anything.
Yeah.
But these new clamshell aluminium things that
hardtops.
weigh like 80 kilos, I mean, that's all acting so high above the roll center of a vehicle without going too far into that side of things. There are limitations on what any suspension modification will do to try and help.
I think nearly every customer that comes through our front gate that has one of those on the top whinges about how shit their car handles. That'd be whether it's got someone else's suspension in it, whether we've put suspension in it, whatever. They've got to understand they've put 80 kilos up, 6 feet in the air.
Well, going back to those old canvas style ones, like I had a lot of mates that ran those in the day. I was an apprentice, I was poor, I couldn't get one out of swag, but we took them off all their cars because a lot of the guys had petrol 80s. So it was an economy issue, but you just didn't notice it. But then if you're going on a trip, like heading up the beach or something, you're like, oh, the car's driving a bit crappy, but it's loaded. But now with those big ones the way they are, no one's lifting them on and off. They're just.
I honestly don't know why they're not illegal. I scratch my head because there is not a single car on this planet that will pass a lane exchange test with a rooftop tent on.
I can tell you now,
no way.
a 5-inch 37 79 with our core conversion set up the way we build them, we'll go through a lane change, no problems, day in, day out, will never be a problem. You could get a leaf sprung 79 on 33s and a 2-inch lift, and you could build a canopy and put that rooftop tent up there with all the solar panels and everything. It's going to tip over. It ain't coming back.
It was like the other day, one of the fitters at work, he pulled up, he's like, sorry, I'm late. I got pulled over by the cops on the way because they were trying to defect me for no sway bars. And he's like, I just took the cop under the car, sway bars front and rear fitted. And the cop's like, well, why is your car handle so bad? He's like, oh, it's the rooftop tent. And the cop's like, oh, okay, no worries. And got it's just like
crazy.
Yeah, like it makes no sense.
It's a battle that all suspension companies are now facing and installers, is that over the years the trend has gone from you can go away for a weekend with a swag and an esky to, hey, you need a canopy on your ute. I'm guilty. I have a canopy on my ute. It makes travelling with young children so much
100%.
easier. And you got the upright fridge in there, but it's the I need a 5-inch lift 37 vehicle, patrol or whatever, because I'm wheeling it hard. And then on the weekends, I want to be able to have my rooftop tent, so it's cut into a dual cab and I've got a canopy and I've got a rooftop tent. I've got twin spare 37s. Yeah. Guess what? The middle of your 37's 1,800 off the ground, 2 metres off the ground. That weight is all way too high up. And no shock tuning, sway bars, coils.
You'd end up, the thing would be that friggin' stiff. to try and get it to not sway.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Not do a decent sway, but then you're just going to pick when you go through, like you do a manoeuvre, like a lane change manoeuvre, all it's going to do is pick a wheel up.
Yeah, exactly.
And on the side.
Yeah,
it's going to be that
braking.
stiff. It's like a skateboard.
Even a braking manoeuvre, that amount of weight up high and at the back of a vehicle when it pitches the nose down,
weight
that
transfer's
weight
huge.
transfer is aggressive. I guess that's just setting expectations when you buy your car or when you decide that you're going to set it up for certain things.
Yeah, they just got to understand if they're going to put a rooftop tent or whatever up high,
Yep.
you've got to understand that it's going to affect the way your car handles.
Definitely,
You got to
yeah.
drive accordingly, and you just got to accept that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not going to drive as good as when I don't have the thing on it.
Listen to this, the salespeople you're dealing with at the companies you're speaking to, at the sales team at Superior, just if they say to you, hey, look, we can do this, but this car's not going to drive great, that's, for some of those guys, 15, 20 years worth of industry experience and longer owning the cars. I mean, that's just the reality of it. But I suppose another thing is there's going to be people out there who go, oh, I've got a rooftop tent and this and that. My GQ drives fine.
Well, they will, because you got to think of human being. A human being gets used of what you do.
Yeah,
100%.
There's been so many of us have had cars that drive like buckets of shit over the
Yep.
years,
Yeah.
and you'll
You
get
don't
in
mind
it, and you'll just go. Old mate says to you, geez, your car wobbles like fuck or whatever it does.
Yeah.
I don't feel it because you're used to it.
Yeah, exactly.
But it doesn't make it any safer.
I like a bit of a firmer car because I like to know what it's doing, and I know you're the same because when we're in the office
I
before,
don't mind a firm ride.
it's a very similar feel, which helps. But like,
I can be either way. Like there's times I don't mind a soft ride, but if I was to choose, I'd probably go more a firmer ride.
yeah, but I could get out of a car and go, that is dialed. That's so good. That's nice and stiff. I know what it's doing when it's cornering. You know, that's how I like it. Someone else could get in and go, oh, that's on train tracks. That's awful. That rides like crap. And then the opposite side of that is some bloke who chuck me his keys and go, oh, my patrol drive, like or cruiser, whatever, Hilux. Oh, this thing drives mint. I take it for a drive, turn around a corner and go, don't like that.
Yeah.
And he'll go, oh no, that's sweet. Everyone's ride quality and handling, I guess, is subjective in their personal preference.
Well,
so that's another.
You look at how much, like we've got Brendan. Well, we've got two guys full time in the shock
Tuning
room,
shocks, yeah.
just tuning shocks because you can have. It used to be years ago you could bring in a valving of a shock and it was pretty much accepted. Everyone was happy with it.
Yep.
Now you've got so many different directions people are going with their setups.
Yep.
Old mate might have his coffee shop in the back of the thing. Next guy's got nothing in it. Next guy's got a rooftop tent.
Yep.
So there is so much revalving being done all the time with shocks because you'll send a shock to someone and for their like we've got, say, your adjustable shocks, 8-stage adjustment, which still does a massive range.
Yeah.
But then you might want to start playing a bit in the rebound or whatever. Like everyone's ass feels a bump different.
Yeah, it's exactly right.
So it's crazy how much has changed over the years to now.
Exactly.
Really, I guess, what would you say?
Personalising
personalising rides to what people want.
Well, people aren't
is more
willing to
now.
compromise as much anymore. I mean, you look at it, if you're going to go out and buy something, and information with the internet is so readily available, and this applies to everything, not just cars, but it's like, I'm going to buy this exact thing because this is ticking all my boxes, and I'm not buying that one. That one might be cheaper, but I'm not compromising, or that one might be dearer and it's not giving me what I want. That information is so available now that people are coming in a lot of instances more informed. There are a lot of instances of being horribly misinformed, and that's where it's hard. If you project confidence when you're saying something, whoever you're saying it to doesn't know is going to believe that it's truth and fact. And that's a dangerous game, but that's just the internet. I mean, like I said before, we used to get on Outer Limits and Pirate and talk to guys in America that were wheeling leafy cars, and we were like, how are you doing this? Get rid of your J-arm, do this. And we were like, cool. And then we were doing those mods and learning it. Now people just go, what do I do? Some guy goes, I do this and it's sweet. And again, he might think his car drives very well. And then some other guy will build it and go, I did this setup and it's because your spring rates are wrong. And it's like, no, it's just, nature of the beast.
Yeah, exactly. Every vehicle can be set up totally different. You can have 5 vehicles lined up and 5 different owners, and every single one of them have a different shock valving or spring rate and that, and they all say their car drives amazing. Like, it's just the natural beast of personalising your own car to do what you
like that.
Yeah, well, even rides. Like one thing that people like, look at tyre pressures people run. We get some people come. I run 32 psi on the road. That's what I've run all my life. We get people come in at 55 psi.
Yeah.
That affects the feel of the car, whether you're at 55 psi or 32 psi or anywhere in between. That makes a difference to someone. That can be a positive feeling, or it could be a negative feeling.
Tyres make a difference.
Oh.
Sidewall, we had...
Whether you got a high sidewall or a small sidewall makes a difference.
Not even that, just brand difference. We had 2 identical coil converted Hiluxes, 2024s. Same coil rates, same shocks. Everything was identical between the 2, and same tyre size, but different tyres. And we had one, it just drove beautifully. The next one came in and they're like, this isn't quite what I expected. And we test drove and we looked at it and we're like, what's going on here? And it's the sidewall of that tyre. We've got to,
it's a lot stiffer.
We've got to know that. That really impacted the way it drove. We knocked 5 PSI out of the tyres. It really helped. But it was like, to prove the point, put a different brand of tyre on, well, they were already set on a rim on that car and it drove beautifully.
Yeah.
Tyres make a difference too.
Yeah, when I bought, a while ago, when I bought all my beadlocks and that, I was just running 33s and that. And I picked the car up from the tyre shop, drove home, threw the swag in it and went bush. And we got onto a corrugated road and my car skipped sideways going straight. And I was like, whoa,
that's not great,
this isn't good. So we got out, and I think I had 59 PSI in each tyre.
Yeah, because they seat the bead.
Yeah, seat the bead.
That's straight up the tyre shop.
Straight up the tyre shop. I was like, holy God. And I've had that car
problem a lot where I've got it from a tyre place and they're just massive pressure.
Yeah, and that's what I realised with that car. It was so light in the rear end. I think I ran 28 in the rear, 38 in the front, and changed that, and it was like, oh, okay, there's nothing wrong with my car. Look, it was just tyre pressures that just made it drive horribly.
Not a good feeling.
Yeah,
and that's one of those things. No amount of suspension change is going to fix that either.
No, that's exactly right.
That's where talking to people helps.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's what's sometimes like you'll be chatting to people and just like just give the sales team a quick ring, or like you'll see it on like Facebook and that people are like, oh, this is wrong with my car and I can't understand it. Just give us a quick ring. We can have a chat. Discuss with someone's car, like, you might have a vehicle that is a bog stock standard Hilux, like 2024 Hilux.
Yeah.
And they've gone and put a suspension kit in it with 500 kg leaves. It's like, well, it's never going to work. And
they're like, 500 kgs in the back?
Yeah, exactly. They're like, oh, I tow the excavator for work once a month.
Yeah.
It's like, put some airbags in it.
Look at the experiences you've had in cars, the experiences I've had. I'm a little older than you, and Mick's only a tad older than me, so he's had more experiences. That's just between the 3 of us. You take the whole sales team into account, and you look at the company as a whole, the amount of different 4-wheel drives that are owned in our company. There's blokes that own Jeeps, there's blokes that own GQs, GUs, 80s, 105s, there's D-Maxes, BT50s, there's Colorados, Rangers, everything.
Forwards with Barras, we get told about every day.
We got some boys rocking some FJ Cruisers, we got 150 Prados, everything's covered there. So, there's people in the company who've got personal experience with a specific vehicle. So you might phone up and speak to a guy who's got an 05 Hilux like you. That's awesome. But failing that, there's a 99.99% chance that the life experience that one of those salespeople has had in one of their many, you said it before, shitbox 4-wheel drives, they can impart the knowledge and go, hey man, it's going to be something along these lines. Like, why is your car death wobbling? Your U-bolts are loose, or your caster bushers are shot. So it helps to speak to the salespeople. The experience is there.
We've seen that a bit too. Cars come in with loose U-bolts and that.
Yeah, we had one the other day, and it tried to kill me and break my hand when the canopy door slammed on my hand. That sucked. But
did your hand in the wrong spot?
No, I squatted down and we were shaking the car because it had a squeak in it. And I squatted down and was holding the canopy, and I had the canopy door open to hear if it was in the tray, which it was. And the gas struts weren't great, so I just slammed the canopy door on my hand.
Clever.
It wasn't real good. But it turned out the squeak, customer's like, it's in the suspension. It's only since I've had the suspension fitted.
That was at 79.
79, and it was the fuel tank was rubbing on his tray, and it just has started coming through the car because he had a lot of stiffer suspension put into the vehicle. So it was just the fuel tank rubbing on the trundle drawer.
And that's,
it was just a simple thing. It was like, unfortunately, the suspension's just a bit stiffer now to suit the canopy, and it's just bringing that noise through the chassis.
You see that now and then when you change out things like suspension or bits and pieces, it then might create that problem that was always there, but you didn't notice.
Resonant noises become more of an issue.
Yeah.
And
it's not all, it's by no means all the time, but I've certainly seen a couple of that situation in my lifetime.
Lifting a vehicle can exaggerate a problem. You can pick up, and I'm using a patrol as an example, not to pick on it because this is a situation where it happens a lot. A guy will have a patrol and he'll go, I haven't got a lot of money, I'm strapped for cash, I'm just going to go coils, shocks, brake lines, I'm going to put drop boxes in, sweet. Cars like your radius arm bushes, they just left them because they're fine with the drop box standard bushes, but what people aren't looking at is how flogged are those bushes, and you lift that car up, that's exaggerated, and it becomes a much bigger problem.
Yeah.
I've seen universal joints in different
Well, now it
yokes.
can be as simple as that wear point that it was
Is
running
now a
on is
different
now
spot.
a different position.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Those uni joints are a good example in the yokes on the drive shafts and that. We've had cars where they drive fine, and then you put a 2-inch lift in it, you're like, man, I've got a driveline vibration. Like, doesn't make sense. Your pinions line up. Hey, look, your unis are actually shot. Well, they didn't vibrate before. It's like, yeah, but they're running in a different spot. Now the angle's changed.
Yep.
Yeah, you're amplifying problems that are hidden, or
It's pulled the pressure off it or put more pressure on it, so now it's allowed it to freely
Yeah.
move and that sort of thing.
it's a battlefield.
It's definitely a balancing act between, it doesn't matter what car you buy, what you're driving. It is especially when you start modifying it, lifting it and that sort of thing, you've just got to talk to the right people that have had experience in those locations that can be like, hey, yeah, like this is wrong, that's wrong.
Yeah.
My car, I thought it drove great, and then when I changed it to long arms, I sold your
Whole
brother
other
those
animal.
control arms, and I was like, hang on, like these bushes virtually fall out of these, and I thought
Those
it drove
bushes
nice.
were shot. Sorry,
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, what arms did you sell?
Yeah.
Sold to my little brother for his GQ. Yeah, that was shot, dude.
That was shocking. And
Average.
Before that,
You would have had good flex.
Had all the flex. Yeah. Had all the flex.
And that's the thing as well, like I for years drove around those Pro Comp shocks, the ES 9000s, I think.
Yeah,
they were.
the-
White Pro Comp.
Yeah, they were definitely, they were
Fancy.
9,000. I can't remember
Yeah.
the model. It was something
Yeah.
9,000.
I had the Rancho 9000.
They were a super soft shock. And I remember going full driving. I went to a place, Sundown National Park, and I remember driving out of it. It's a really long, it's about 17 Ks, pretty rough track into the campgrounds. And I remember getting in there and thinking, my shoulders are so sore from hanging onto the steering wheel, from keeping the car going straight, because it was just wallowing. And when I changed over to our 2.0 remote res from those shocks, I was like,
Yeah.
this is a new car. And it was just from the fact that it had way too soft of shocks in it for a big lift.
And just that style of twin tube shock, that emulsion shock, I mean, they don't have that ability to keep the oil cool like
Yeah,
a remote
yeah.
res does. And that's another jump is shock technology. You know, we've touched on live axle and leaves and coils and your various things in IFS, but your shock is such a huge part of controlling the compression and rebound of your suspension. But yeah, a shock like that Pro Comp, driving 15 Ks on corrugation, she would have been pretty warm.
She's going to get warm, yeah.
Whereas a remote res, you've got the oil's in direct contact with the outer cylinder. So that whole shock body you can see from outside the car, that's a radiator, that's transferring heat out. Then you've got the reservoir, you've got extra oil.
Yep.
So extra oil capacity, it takes longer to get hotter, and you've got increased surface area, and that's why our reservoirs are fins. So I mean, the jumps in technology there are huge. So, you know, standard radius arms are okay in a vehicle. Yeah, hybrids in a patrol are better. Nitro gas shocks are okay in a vehicle. Remote res are better.
Yeah.
It's that jump, and it's like, but it's horses for courses. If I'm loading a 79 up and towing a mini digger all week, and on the weekends I head up the beach, nitro gas are going to do everything you want. But if you plan on belting up the Cape and doing 10 hours a day on corrugations, remote res, you wouldn't even bother with a nitro gas shock.
That's exactly right.
And that's-
And it comes with, like, especially like we're talking about 79s, like the coil kit as well. That can drastically, or it does, it drastically changes the vehicle. I remember driving before we went to Cliffhanger 2019, driving around my old boy 79, leaf sprung, and I was like, this car sucks. Like, it was just a dirty old thing. And then what did we do? 3,500 Ks or something on that trip in there, and it was freshly coil converted. The car was registered for a week before we left.
That was your first test. That was the first SSM vehicle.
exactly.
Well, I still drive that vehicle. Like
we drove in here.
on the weekend, I just my best mate and I just took off out west to pick up an old Land Cruiser for laughs. He's got a brand new 79 facelift. He's V8, luckily, and it's all stock. We haven't done anything except he's got an ATD bar and rails. And we were driving along, trailer on. A few times he and I had discussions about this rides pretty well for a stock car. Like it was pretty nice, and because we've been playing with cars since we were teenagers together. And then we got back to his house when we were unloaded his Cruiser. I said, I'll take you for a run in this, because he's had a coil converter 79, but I was like, I'll take you for a run in this thing because it's big, so you can see what it's like. And even just going from, we sat in that Stocko for 6 hours, and then we got in the coil one, and both of us were like, oh, that's so much better to drive. It was so much nicer, like in terms of ride quality, unbeatable.
Yeah, and that's where you, as well with, like, we had a few comments lately with the coil conversion, people talking about like without getting into the depth of geometry and that again, is like someone was like, nah, the link setup in that looks wrong. And it's just like, well, do you understand what we were trying to achieve with that vehicle? Because like that's why we chose to go the 4-link in our core conversions for the 79, is a 4-link is so versatile. You can aim it at so many different things, where with this car, we've aimed it to hold a GVM of up to 4.495 tonne.
Yeah, 4495.
Yeah, so it goes to a massive GVM, so you can't have a link system in it that's designed like a trophy truck, because when you put a big canopy on the back of it, it's going to sack back and drive horrible.
With a rooftop tent, 37s, it's not good.
We've designed that in a way that it's designed for big GVMs and being able to handle that weight, where someone with a 4-link in the back of their GQ is going to design it completely different because it's designed to do a completely different job.
Yeah, I'm pretty fortunate. My previous role here, in that role, I have driven, and it's not an exaggeration, hundreds of different 4-wheel drives set up differently, and hundreds of on their own of just Coil 79s, and from every walk of life, 3-inch, 4-inch, 5-inch, 37s, canopy, no canopy, you name it, and that core conversion just works in every application I've come across. It's just been fine.
Yeah, it was a grey Cruiser. Yeah, it was definitely the grey, and just driving it up, we drove up. What's that hill? Hennessy Hill, where the mountain bike track is.
Oh yeah,
like it's real wombatty.
Gets all out of it.
Yeah, it's real wombatty up there.
It went up Hennessy Hill.
I'd believe it. In that, yeah, twin locked V8, no problems, low range.
Hopefully not the bike track.
No, not the bike track at Hennessy, the long track.
Probably a bit average.
The one we
push bike rider comes flying down and sees Mitch wheeling up.
we went
redneck in a Cruiser.
we went down Hennessy Hill. That was fun. We went from the top down.
You're talking about Hennessy where the rocks are.
With the rocks where you come up and you've got to do that.
There's a crossover kind of halfway up.
Yeah. So I drove that in that Cruiser, and like I'd never wheeled like Cruiser, and like just drove straight up it. Like it's not a super difficult hill in any way, but unlocked it, just cruised straight up it. Like there's no worries at all.
Works in that application, but also works again maybe a little bit of illegal towing a lot of weight.
Yeah,
beautifully.
Exactly right. Yeah. Like
in the early days with that charcoal Cruiser, man, I'd towed some weight.
Yes,
When I was right into the racing thing, it was heavy.
Yeah,
but it was good.
I just drove it like a race car.
Hey, I have driven it like a race car when your race car was on fire.
But yeah, it all the applications, and again, comes down to how the suspension's set up.
Yep.
Airbags to help the cause with those variances and load, and again, it's that experience where, like you said, if you phone out the Superior sales team, you can speak to someone who's been involved in doing something in a 4-wheel drive that's going to match what you're doing. I don't think I've yet, in 9 years, spoken to someone who's done something that I haven't seen or been involved in some capacity in a 4-wheel drive yet.
Yeah.
It's just not, there is that depth of knowledge there and help and experience, which is good, because as we touched on, it's a minefield. There's a million different things.
There's a million different things, and that's what I think is great. Like we say, if we're looking at a Patrol or even the SSMs, anything like that, where we can offer 3 different types of radius arms. We can offer different control arm setups, different shock setups, everything. We can tailor kits. A lot of people just think, they look at our website, we have a kit, and that's what you get. Not the case at all. Give us a ring. We can discuss with you what your plan is. Like, if you want to go, if you're, say, you live up in Rocky, you want to go to 5 Rocks every weekend and play in the sand dunes, great. We can set you up with a nice low patrol. If you want to go rock crawling at the Springs or Swan Gully, we can set you up for that. Well,
give you a bit of ground clearance.
Yeah. Want to go to the Cape, anything, Travel Australia, we can set it up for so many different things, and especially like we can keep a lot of vehicles street legal. You do not have to just stick to what's on our website.
I guess that's where a lot of these overnight sort of businesses, because that COVID period, again, touched on in the episode with Mick, that COVID period, our industry survived it well and boomed. There's a lot of pop-up businesses that are now just selling kits online, like not consignment, but like for other companies. So it's like you can go to some of these websites and go, I want a Tough Dog kit, or I want a Dobinson kit or whatever. And we sell all those same brands as well. The difference is with those companies, you're just like, click, give me a kit, and it just turns up, and it may not be what you need it to be. Whereas if you phone us, speak to the people, tell us what you're doing with the car, give us the experiences of what you want to experience in it, and we can tailor it. And that's the difference. Online shopping's great, but think about it, for a lot of people, you've got to car that's cost you anywhere from even from $5,000 to 150 grand, doesn't matter. You've spent your hard earned on it. You don't want it to drive like crap. You don't want it to be unsafe. You don't want to endanger anyone else's lives on the road. Speak to the right people and get the car
It's
set
a lot
up.
of money to guess when you're talking like a $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 kit.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
And that's the thing.
Ask questions.
Ask questions, whether it's on our live chat or give us a ring. And as sometimes you'll get in the sales team, like they'll have a customer on the phone. Sometimes maybe 3 or 4 people will get involved in helping each other set it up.
That's something that obviously when you're on the phone or just you're outside of the walls of our business that you wouldn't see, but sometimes someone will have a phone call and the customer will be asking for something and they'll be like, look, give me 5. And there'll be an in-depth chat with a couple of salespeople, but not even just salespeople. Mick himself will get involved. You'll come around, if you need to. Guys from my team can, on occasion, come in and help. Like that expansive knowledge is huge, and you'll get what you need out of it.
Exactly.
You're not just going to get mate, I'll sell you these 2.5 remote resin hyperflow, and this and this and this, and here's a $40,000 bill, thanks for coming, and hang up. It's not what we're doing.
No, that's exactly right. We want to make sure you're getting the best experience out of your car, and us as a business to make sure we've got it right for you, because it's your car at the end of the day.
And again, you just don't get that on online shopping.
No.
One thing we never talked about was aluminium, like how we're going into a lot of aluminium stuff to save weight.
Products.
Like a lot of the cars now, everyone, like that few years ago, it was probably around that COVID time, we had the problem with transport was really cracking down. I think what originally started was, I think there's a I don't know what state it was in, whether it was Victoria, there's a caravan.
It was New South Wales, I think it was. It was a Prado towing a caravan, had an accident.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately some people passed away as a result of the accident.
I think it went to the coroners, didn't it? I think it ended up a pretty big thing.
Well, the transport guys scooped up everything that was associated with the Prado and caravan, and as a bulk lot put it on a set of scales, and it was over. And that person went to jail.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Okay.
I read that story a few times.
I missed this completely. I'm going to have to look this up.
That's what started the whole, or that was...
It made people nervous.
I think that's what started the whole thing, with everyone starting to panic and the transport really starting to focus on everyone being overloaded. And at that point, everyone was overloaded.
Yeah, 100%.
You got to remember, you can't have a car trailer with tow behind a Land Cruiser. You can't go and put a Land Cruiser on a car trailer and legally tow it.
Yeah, no.
Because your car trailer probably weighs the best part of a ton.
Yeah, yep.
And your Cruiser you just put on there probably weighs the best part of whatever, 2 ton or whatever it is.
3, 4.
Then generally you're overweight. Like, yes, you can sometimes get away with it, but also there's a lot of people who are overloaded. Caravan, I got a 21-foot caravan and it's loaded up. So when you go caravanning, everything's in it. Thing's probably overloaded. I've never put on scales, but I pretty much guarantee I'd be right at the limit if I'm not over.
Caravan and towing is one of the big ones. Like,
Definitely.
How many times do you see a T30, T31 X-Trail towing a caravan?
Oh, it's crazy.
Like, hang on a minute. That should.
My grandparents travelled Australia towing a caravan with a Camry.
It's pretty insane.
That's pretty sketchy.
But that's where this aluminium stuff started to come about.
The GVM thing, transport got more actively involved in, again, like taking out your old yellow sticker, off-road use only, get off the road. That swung around into, okay, your vehicle needs to be legal, and there's two sides to it for vehicle owners. One is that legality issue of if you're heavy, you go to jail. The other thing is you just void your insurance. I mean, buy a $100,000 cruiser,
And then
Ram, whatever,
caravan.
canopy, put a 90 grand van behind it, suspension, whatever you want to do. Even if you just buy a stock cruiser and put a van behind it, you're still almost 200 grand in the hole. And then have an accident and have the scalies involved in the whole process and go, you were 100 kilos over, and you don't get your insurance paid out. And insurance companies, at the end of the day, they're a business. They are going to find any way to void a policy. I've heard of some interesting things, voiding policies that companies, they've gotten away with. So you've got to be mindful of that. And that's where, like you said, moving towards the aluminium products. Pre-COVID, we were already doing the alloy upper control arms for the IFS cars, which is fantastic. And lately, because of that push towards, okay, this vehicle has bugger all carrying capacity, what can we do about it? The billet alloy radius arms, which are so light, and yet you're still strong. You're stronger than factory. You're not stronger than the steel, 700 grade arms we're doing.
But we definitely exceed OE by a fair amount.
You're far exceeding OE. It's the same with the steering arms. And what Nick Barrett, he's setting up his GU Patrol, and he's taking out all his steel superior stuff that he has got in favour of putting the billet alloy rear long arms in it and the billet radius arms and the billet, and he's waiting on a few other products that we're working on for those solid axle vehicles, which will be fun. And he's doing an M57, but he's worked out that by the time he does all that, roughly on numbers, it's saving hundreds and hundreds of kilos in that GU. Then he's just going to come through and tick it off as an off-road pro. So then you end up with a 4-inch legal car on 35-inch tyres in Queensland that's got carrying capacity.
Yeah.
You can actually put weight in it.
Remember, did you ever see that little cartoon we did?
With the beer cartons and the...
Yeah, I think you could have your beer.
Yeah, I remember it was
you
just
could have
hanging around
yourself.
when I started.
I think
Yeah.
you could have a beer carton in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Keith done it.
Keith did it. It was Keithy, that's right.
It was pretty cool, but it was an eye-opener. Like literally GQ wagon with a bit of bar work on it. Side steps, bull bar, I think maybe winch and battery. You're basically a carton of beer in the thing, and that was about it.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Pretty much done.
And 10, 20 years ago, or 20 years ago, didn't matter. You could load it up as much as you want. Vehicles like that never got pulled up and scaled. Now, it's becoming... I mean, transport have a liability, they're liable. At the end of the day, and I hate to say it, the government have a responsibility to make sure that road users are behaving properly. I don't agree with a lot of the legislation and ruling, but if they're just going to let old Joe Average get around his 60 with 400 tonne on it and a 70-foot van behind it.
Yeah, it's...
Like, you know, everyone goes, oh, those old cars are indestructible. Mate, they're a C-section riveted chassis. They fold up like you wouldn't believe. They've got to be responsible because we're on their road at the end of the day.
That's
we're
exactly
paying
right.
for, but it's their road. So you've got to be mindful of that. And that's, again, it's where the alloy stuff comes in. We can save you weight. You know, there are some items you don't need under a four-wheel drive. You go, hey, that's pretty unnecessary. Let's not put that on there. Save you 10 kilos, save you 5 kilos. That all adds up.
Yeah,
that adds
definitely.
up big time.
Yeah, especially like when you're talking like radius arms and like a long arm. Like there's a big weight saving in just
huge
those
difference.
two
Yeah, 'cause
alone.
you're talking solid. Those long arms are solid. Most of our stuff's solid bar. So you're talking,
It's a lot of weight.
talking whatever metre long bar solid, then with a strong back welded on the thing. It's pretty heavy.
Yeah, I remember when I drove round to I think I went to my parents' house. Maybe my old man came round mine to getting the long arms out of the back of the patrol. I think my dad was there to help me, and he was like, he's like, what the hell? I'm like, yeah, they got to be strong. So
man arms.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, because that was two of them strapped together in packing. He's like, oh right, so there's definitely weight there.
Yeah, like there's a bit more alloy stuff coming to the market that we're working on. Like sort of what I predicted is happening. Like when we released our alloy stuff, I said, we'll watch these companies A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Straight away, they've just done the same.
Exactly right.
Yeah, they just copy what we do, the other companies. It's pretty annoying, but that's what it is. But yeah, we'll just keep progressing with our own things. Like
I mean, we're not the first company to make alloy suspension components for four-wheel drive, but in Australia, at a level of mass production and making it readily available to people at a cost-effective price point. The first ones to
you'll find now the whole industry will start changing.
Start
There'll
pushing
be more
into
and
that.
more alloy stuff going under vehicles. Like you see it from OE companies are starting to do alloy, whereas you've never seen that before. You look at the 300 series alloy body.
Technology's miles ahead.
The spindle, you get alloy spindles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're all
next-gen range is the same. Alloy steering knuckles.
So it's coming, and you just got to keep changing with the times. And but
I love all
try
the
and make them look cool.
alloy stuff, and that's the thing. You're like, it looks killer and it's light. But like every time I go over to Angus's desk, you're like, oh, what are you up to? He's just like, don't look at it. Go away.
I love
get away from my desk. What do you
I
want?
love hiding what we're doing from people at work in like sales and various departments because
you got to keep it quiet because otherwise,
and
it's until it's ready to
But
sell.
then when we've got a cool working prototype, we can be like, oh, look at this.
Yeah.
Everyone loses it. Everyone, oh, that's cool. Whereas by the time we're releasing those new products, I'm sick of it because I've been looking at it for so long.
Yeah.
And
I get sick of them sitting on your table for so long.
No, they don't sit on my table very long.
So you look at got that on the market because you did it like last year.
Because they're getting made. That's not true. You'll go through 15 variations of it, and then the sales team gets so excited, which is awesome because that enthusiasm carries to the market and to the public. Whereas if the sales team ride that process out with me from the start, after 12 months, they're like, I'm sick of this, just sell it. No, you want that enthusiasm there. So I hide a lot from you guys. So much stuff you don't know about.
Oh, yeah. There's
There's a few things he doesn't know about.
So I'll be happy if they're a good product and you can sell them.
Oh, there's some nice little things coming. So the alloy stuff.
Yeah, so you've got, just so the listeners know, you're sort of talking radius arms. At the moment, we haven't done Hyperflex or Superflex in alloy. We've just kept it to just radius.
Just caster corrected
in
arms
Toyota
and cruisers and that.
We've done Toyota and we've done the Nissan. Not the pin style. We've got to worry
just-
about that
just
because that's a
the
low
hybrid.
selling thing these days.
No, pin style's definitely faded out. Everyone's going to a hybrid because it's a fantastic upgrade.
Yeah,
You've got
because we never went Hyperflex, Superflex. We will eventually, I think, but at the moment, I don't really see that much call in it because most of those guys are wheeling their shit pretty hard in rocks and off the beaten track, whereas the alloy's more your tourers. That's where everyone's trying to save weight.
exactly, yeah.
This is where the listeners need to comment and say, make us build an alloy Hyperflex, please.
That's it.
We'll do it. It's just there's a lot of other priorities at the moment than worrying about that. There's other cool things we're trying to get to market that we're putting out.
So many new cars that have coming out, like in the last year, the new releases of all these new models of the next gen Ranger, the GR Hilux, it's so much.
Well, you got your billet steering arms. There's a few more
your
steering
rods
arms coming.
as in like your tie rods and drag links, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, then you got your rear lowers. There's a few other.
Well, I think the rear uppers, you've done them, haven't you? You just I don't know if they're in production yet.
They're there's some sampling happening now. So some rear uppers for some vehicles. I don't know how far you want me to go.
We'll keep that quiet.
There is some more steering arms coming to fill some holes.
Yeah.
I think that's expected. So there's some tie rods coming for various models, cruisers and that we didn't do in that first wave. They're coming now.
Yeah. And
Did you have to do anything for Jimny in alloy?
Jimny?
Got a few things coming.
Jimny's coming. That's a one you've got. You can pretty much only make things in alley for Jimnys because they have a 13 kilo Jimny.
Yeah, you've got to keep that weight down. Jimny's a fun one.
Jimnys are a cool car. They are very cool.
Yeah.
That's
a live axle 3-link front and rear.
Yeah,
that's cool. So
there's axle tubes are like this round.
Is that the diff or the tie rod? I can't tell.
Tie rod looks about 12 mil diameter.
They're 24 mil the tie rod from factory. 24 mil hollow.
It's little.
Things will upgrade.
Cool
So
car.
lots of alloy coming.
Lots of alloy coming. Lots of new stuff across everything coming. There's always trying to progress in the business. It's just sometimes when you get, like we have of 2024, 2025, 7 different new models of cars get released. That just takes time. It's just like we've said in other podcasts, there's only so many hours in a day that we can chase up each car.
Putting 40 people into the R&D department from the outside might seem like a great way to tackle that. More people would just cover every car. It just doesn't work that way.
No,
There's
need a
limitations
whole other
of
warehouse.
not only that, there's just limitations of what you can actually manage.
Like
what
we
you can
broached
do.
on other conversations too. It depends on the type of people that own those cars too, whether they're even going to buy that product. BYD Shark at the moment, that car's just come out. We don't even know what that type of person's going to be. That's going to buy
I put the BYD, my perception of it at the moment from what I've seen of the car and been involved with and what I know of it.
What I've seen is it's pretty average off road.
It's your very Ford Raptor's a really capable four-wheel drive, but 99% of people aren't using it as that. It's like the
jet ski tow.
RM Williams Moleskins. I'm the site guy. I'm just going to pop from the office out and make sure the boys have got these hose clamps on site, and then I'm coming back. It's a town car.
Yeah.
That's what the BYD is going to be because it can't tow any weight. No one's going to tow a caravan with that thing.
No,
they only tow 2.5 tonne. Everyone's like, 2.5's heaps. It's not. Going back to that GVM thing, it's not a lot of weight.
No, yeah.
So,
it's horrible for towing,
Yeah, that car, but we'll look at it as a company and do what we can for it, but I'm not going to, we're not going to
drop anything for that one.
Because like you look at the video Lucas and Mad Matt did at the Springs, like it virtually turns off when you get it onto a big steep angle up a hill. It starts turning off.
Fancy having a four-wheel drive that doesn't want to drive up a hill.
Yeah, but and that's
safe.
That's probably what it is. It's probably a safety parameter that it's got a
shuts
angle
down
meter in.
when you're about to roll over.
It
just turns itself off, so then you can kind of
the lithium battery doesn't catch fire.
The driver can make it. Yeah, that's where you make the assessment. It's like, the wheel's up, but if I just poke that a little harder on the throttle, it's going to do that. But the car's going to go, we're out, and turn off, and that's dangerous.
One thing we never, I guess, briefly talked about was things like coilovers, bypass, that sort of, like it's not a big selling thing in our business, but we do sell it.
Yep.
Like we do sell the Pro Fender brand. Like they're good, like race application's great.
Yeah.
On road, not really. Like the bump stops are cool, like hydraulic bump stops, but people have got to understand things like hydraulic bump stops aren't as smooth as a progressional rubber sort of bump stop.
You hit a hydro bump in the race car at speed, and you know about it because you on the intercom you both hear Mick and my voice go.
It's usually because
like you just get,
but for us to hit that bump stop,
it's a lot
we've
of
just
travel.
blown through that much up travel. And then we're now at the dead zone of the bypass shock.
So it's pulling up real quick.
Which for people that don't really understand that, it's when your tubes on your bypass is where it's bypassing. For normal up down
oil's
travel.
flowing.
In what we refer to the dead zone is where it's gone past your bypass tubes, and now it is purely on a massive stack of shims. And it's just having to force that through the pyramid stack. So the theory of that is if you've blown that far past your bypass and you're into that area, you're trying to stop that
You've got to be stopping compression.
You're then combined with coming onto a hydraulic bump stop. So it's generally a reasonably hard pull up right at the end.
And like coilovers it's coils and shocks in one. It's a neat little package. It is great, and it might appear to be an easy thing to throw into a car. It's not that simple to package, and I know there's a lot of listeners out there with patrols that have gone bypass coilover. How do I get that under that guard?
They look good. The thing they've got to remember too, when they're putting a bypass in a car, you've got to match the length spot on.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, you end up riding it. If you put a shock in that's too big or too short, either one can stuff you up. You're riding in that dead zone of the shock, and it's now just a pig of a thing that really you've now got to then soften up the valving a bit because you're riding in that last piece of the shock, whether it's rebound compression. So you've got to soften the valving right up. Well, then your tubes are really a waste of time.
Yeah, exactly.
Because now I'm just using it as a conventional shock.
Because what will happen is someone will go, well, I want to keep that under the bonnet. I want 14 inches of travel. Okay, cool. So you're going to bring the top of that down, and your diff is always with whatever lift you want to run, say equivalent to a 4-inch, your diff is always going to be there. You're now moving the body down. And then it's like, you passed 3 of your bypass tubes already on your compression stroke. You're like, I'm riding on shim. Ugh, what's the point?
So I would certainly say if you're going to run bypass in your patrols or whatever, don't do it incorrectly put the correct length shock in so you're running in a nice part of the shock.
Probably sort of give him a bit of a shout out. Daniel Kissler, he's a YouTuber in Melbourne. Pretty for you, Mick, a lot of listeners will know who Dan is. He's done a lot of work, and I know for a fact that Dan has had a lot of people come to us and buy 10-inch triple bypasses for the front of patrols. He makes up a mount kit and everything like that. And Dan's kit's really, really nice. He still runs it with a rubber bump stop and everything. But his kit's designed with the 10-inch to make sure that it goes to full open and full closed, to make sure to get it to work correctly. And that's what's come into with his new car he's building in the custom diff that he's put in the front of it. I chatted to him a fair bit on Instagram, and he said he's like, I need to get a couple of custom-made things to make sure the shock works, because if I don't do, like, he's changed it from radius arms to a 5-link to change caster sweep and that through travel, because he's like, I'm wasting my time running this. If I can't get the proper correct travel in this shock, I'm wasting my time doing all this work. And I know that heaps of Dan's mates through Roadrunner Off-Road and that sort of thing, they've come in and bought a lot of them. We've got a great shim stack as well that works quite well for the patrols.
There is tons of companies making those sorts of bypass mounts and things for patrols, but 99% of them, I know you bought the odd kit.
I've bought 2 kits and thrown them in the bin.
Supposed to be kits that go on, and they either end up in the bin or they've ended up cut up and modified, and it's like, this just doesn't work.
Yeah.
From what I've seen of Dan's, has worked really well.
Work great. Everything gets packaged well, keeps everything under the guards. And that's another thing where, like you were talking about hydraulic bump stops, a lot of guys, they will set their car up for massive amounts of flex. Like they'll run a 3-inch lift with like one of our 13-inch travel smoothie shocks, and they go, I want hydraulic bump stops in it. It doesn't work great.
Scares me straight away.
It doesn't work great, and it's because you have to wind the bump stop so far down, it ends up putting leverage on the bump stop and that sort of thing. It's
even if you say in theory you didn't have to wind your bump stop down, say in theory you made your mounts down low and it was all right. What people have got to understand is if you're talking big travel, you're talking a big angle that diff's rolling to the chassis, to horizontal, whatever you want to refer to it. The problem is when that's pushing on the bump stop, it's starting at a point when the bump's pushing square, and as that diff comes up more, it starts trying to push that bump stop out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, put the side load
and all it
on
does
everything.
is side load the seal, side loads the neck
can.
push assembly. So you're better off. Yeah, big flexing cars. Well, we'll rephrase it. Big articulating cars.
Yeah, yeah.
Because big difference between just you can have a big flexing car like a trophy truck at whatever. So we're talking 26, 28 inch travel.
But it's this far from.
But it's just
striker
pushing
at
straight
night.
up, straight down.
Exactly
It's with
right,
not a
yeah.
great deal of side.
And same, like, yeah, you look at a trophy truck in the back of them, you see they do not hit bump stop ever. It is all relying on the shock for everything like that.
Shock's doing a hell of a lot of
Well,
it.
you're never hitting that dead zone in the top of your bypass shock.
Exactly,
Those things.
yeah.
They are working.
But again, that steps in the shocks they're running, steps way bigger. Like they're running 7-tube bypass. I think even ADS shocks now, or Arizona Desert shocks, I think they've got a 10-tube bypass shock. They're double-ended, so they have a rebound in it on the same.
Tune.
Yeah, it'd be but yeah,
Oh,
there's
yuck.
a big amount of technology.
on the Ultra 4 we run 5 tubes,
Yep.
which I love. So it's 3 on the compression, 2 on the rebound. But yeah, they work really good.
The last time we took that out, jumping it with 205 litres in it.
Yeah, nice.
So it was the smoothest.
I was on
in-
like your Woe Boys in like your
Online.
forests.
I think 6 years I've been sitting in that car, and that was the smoothest I've ever
Yeah,
felt.
for it to
Oh,
jump,
wild.
for it to be able to go basically unloaded, like pulling the end of a race with nearly no fuel in it, to being fueled up at 200 and I think it was 250 or no, it's bigger than that. 200 and I think it was more because it's almost.
The new
Yeah,
tanks.
it's like 250 litres.
Yeah, the new ones.
So that's a lot of weight hanging over
the
the
very
arse of the
back.
car.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's above the axle, but it's a long way past
Yeah,
it.
we don't hit the bump stops that often because we've got the bypass tuned well, and it's using. I've got it pretty dialed in where we're riding in the nice part of the shock,
Exactly,
where
yeah.
the shim stack is.
Yeah, it does
piston.
ride well. And your race guys as well, you guys that are playing with, going out and doing Ultra 4, doing winch challenges, doing your Ultimate Rock, URC and that, and wheeling. Like, we can help there as well. We're not just limited to road cars.
No, exactly,
And
yeah.
again, a fairly decent handful of staff in the company have done it and been involved in it for a very long time, him included. You've dabbled.
Yeah, I've dabbled.
Been around
I've
it,
got
built a few things.
got a race car. Well, it's just a car because it's never been to a race, so I can't claim it as a race car. It's just a car there.
It's a
some tube in it.
It's a car. Yeah. But yeah, so there's a lot of avenues of four-wheel drive suspension we can get involved with.
With like just back on bump stops, just briefly, like a hydraulic bump stops. If you're going to go and put them in a car, whether it's race car or road car, whatever, just remember when you go and buy a lot of this stuff out of the box is just a generic base tune.
Yes.
It can be no good for anywhere near what you want to try and run it at or what you feel comfortable, because think of a race car or a conventional car, between all your different cars, geometry everywhere is so much different. So, and you've got different weights, especially a race car. You might have a fuel tank over the arse end, you might not, you might have a short rear end, you might have spare tyres on the back, whatever. It's all going to make a difference. So a lot of that stuff you're going to have to retune.
Yeah.
Even though
nothing
that
off the
sounds
shelf
that
is
shit,
right.
but yeah, you're basically buying a product that is at a base level.
Yeah.
Then you've got if you don't know what you're doing, you need to be then looking at, keeping in mind you're going to be paying someone, the likes of say Mitch Thorpe from Dial Off-Road, to tune the shock. And that's going to be no matter what brand. It doesn't matter
that's exactly
whether you buy, I'm not going to go and say the brands, but whatever brand you buy in the world, in the same situation, someone has to tune that shock.
That's exactly right.
Whether or not it's done, sometimes we do it straight from the workshop. We can get the information off the customer, what you're doing, and we can get the tune pretty close to where we think.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
you've still got to then put in your car and fine tune it. It's unlikely you're going to get it perfect how you want it.
That's exactly right, and I've seen that across the industry. Chatting with Mad Matt, he said Mad Matt's got his race car, and it's a pretty simple. It's virtually just all our off-the-shelf
It's
stuff.
an 80.
It's 80 series. It's just got some high flex arms, 2.0 remote res. Like it's a very pretty simple conventional setup for a comp truck. And he said he had it wasn't a comp truck, but it was a car sitting there that had triple bypass shocks in it, coilovers, all that sort of stuff. And they said, "Come for a drive, Matt. I'll show you what real suspension is." And Matt got in and he's like, "What's wrong with this thing?" And they were like, "Oh," they were like, "It's great." Matt's like, "No, He's like, there's something wrong with these shocks. Like, he's like, it drives horribly. And he's like, who's tuned them? What have you had done? They're like, oh no, we just bolted them in. And Matt was like, no, like, ring, I think it was, they were pro fenders. Matt's like, ring Superior, send the shocks back and tell them a bit about the car, because they can change this so much.
If you're going to go down that pathway of wanting to get the shocks from us, and if you want a straight up tune in them, the car has to be finished.
Yeah, you
because
can't,
we need
you can't
to
ring
know,
us when you're building it and expect us to be able to get it right.
Yeah, you can't say, oh, I've got a Patrol chassis and it's got an LS and I'm jamming a 4-link in the back and it's like the arms are this long or whatever and I'm this much wheel travel. That doesn't help us enough. We need to know the length of your link. We need to know where in relation to the one end of your link that you're mounting your coil over. We need to know the angle the coilovers on both, X and Y, like two axes. We need to know the ride height of the vehicle. We need to know how much shaft you got compressed to that height. Like it's not, I'll tune your shocks. It doesn't work that way. And anyone that tells you they can do it that way, it doesn't work.
Yeah, like in that scenario, like we can get you, like if you're looking at a coilover, in that sort of scenario, we can get you pretty close with your coil rate and that sort of thing.
Well,
but
even
then when it comes into valving and that sort of thing, we can get it close. It is then you've got to go and take it out and tune it. Like you look at trophy truck guys, like the top 10 teams of the world that are spending multi-millions of dollars a year on racing and that sort of thing. Some of those guys are tuning their cars 3-4 times a year to race, and the trophy truck manufacturer has to specify the valving to who they're buying the shock package from. Yeah. They're not. That's part of like the trophy truck world that from chatting to guys over the years. They said like, we order shocks, we either get them with no shims or the shims we tell them. They will just be whichever brand it is. There's your shocks. Yeah. Tell us how to tune it. And you've got to, with race shocks or anything, you've got to get them tuned. Like my car's sitting there, Brendan's thrown a shim stack at them. Once in whichever decade I get it driving, we're going to take it over to Old Burp and go for a run down the back on the little whoops that are there.
Old Burp will be a housing estate by the time you finish your car.
That'll be North City.
Newman Road will be a 4-lane highway and there'll be a bridge to Beachmere. You're not using it there, man.
but and see, because for all I know, the coilover towers I've welded are going to snap off. So I've got to take it for a drive and tune it and tell Brendan what's happening.
Limiting straps.
Yep.
Yeah, so one like with suspension, because we'll still talk about it because it is still under suspension.
Yeah.
If you're going to set up an off-road car, and for people that don't understand shocks, there's no magic in them. They're just a hydraulic cylinder. No matter how much people want to carry on, there's some magic thing. They're like diesel tuners carry on. Diesel tuning's magic. But
fuel screw and a boost tee.
But yeah, the limiting straps. So basically, in a shock, like it's very simple. You've generally, depending on different shocks, but most of them have got a circlip in the rod guide. Yep. Okay, when the shock's coming apart on rebound, that piston comes all the way down, hits the rod guide assembly, banging on a circlip. Yep. It's not real good for the shock, not real good for the shims, not real good for anything in the shock. It
makes them leak.
Yeah.
Yeah, one can be leak, one can just be, you can just destroy a shock, you can snap it, you can strip a thread, you can do whatever.
Yeah.
Different shocks have got different size threads. Some are imperial, some are metric, some are 10 mil, 12 mil, 16 mil, all over the place. But generally, if you're going to be driving your truck hard, racing it and all that sort of stuff, you put limiting straps on it.
And that same mindset applies to just factory IFS cars. This is why a lot of them you see they have bump stops that catch strikers that catch the upper control on it. So your strut can't blow itself apart.
That's it. You do see, and some of the models haven't got that.
Some don't,
and they're more susceptible to getting shit broken. But limiting straps are a good thing. Generally, you don't put them on a road car, just space and all that. Most people just couldn't be bothered. For like a race car, when you adjust them, like you can buy those clever ones.
You have to run the clevers.
Yeah, so basically the reason you do that is so you can tension them. Because you don't want to have it basically going full open and then your strap just coming tight. You need to actually limit your travel. That Ultra 4 of mine, I think I set it, there was no real exact you had to be. I think I set it probably maybe 40 mil between full down because it stretches over time. Yeah, if you're out there racing and they get wet or whatever like that, you've got X amount of stretch in it. Or whether they've dried out or whatever. So you always have a bit more. So that's just one thing for people to realise. If they're setting up like a winch truck or something like that, would be an example.
Yeah,
you'd be mad not to have limiting straps on it.
Even if you're just putting bypassing coilovers in your road going patrol, road going.
Yeah, like you don't want to destroy your shocks.
No, exactly.
Yeah, it's a big
it's
investment.
good
Just-
insurance.
Yeah, just speak to people that know what they're talking about.
Exactly right. Yeah, and there's no given. Like I've had questions recently, like, oh, what kit do I need for limit straps in my car? We can just sell you the parts. The setup is completely
Well,
indicative to your vehicle.
I've seen in Ultra 4 applications mostly limit straps. I've seen them bolt to bolt on the coilover. I've seen them on the sway bar.
I run them. Yeah, I run them both ways on mine. On the
Yeah.
back because I still tore a shock apart when I was running limiting straps. So I've got them because I've got long lower links. So I've got the shock halfway up the arm roughly. Okay, so I've got a limiting strap from the bottom bolt on the bottom shock to the top. So it limits whether it's articulating or whatever, it's limiting that way. But then I've also got it going from the chassis to the. I think I go to the. No, I go to the diff.
Yeah, it goes to the diff in the
Yeah.
back, yeah.
And what I worked out when I was originally just going to the diff itself, I wasn't taking notice of when it's articulating.
It just rolls it over.
It rolls it, and it wasn't pulling. It was a shock going full open before the limiting strap was taking effect.
Yeah.
Full down travel, it was working.
Yeah.
So then I've got the 4 on it now. So whether it's articulating or you're jumping the vehicle, it's
Yeah.
pulling it up either way.
Yeah.
And I haven't had a problem since that.
The Miller Pro Sport chassis run it to the sway bar, which I always think
okay.
is
There's
awesome.
no-
chassis to sway
Yeah,
bar.
there's so many different ways you
As
can
lo-
do
as
it.
A
long as
lot of load to put on a little sway bar link. Like
It's not a little sway bar link though.
True, no.
But yeah, you're pulling everything up.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's-
Yeah.
You're talking chassis
to sway bar.
Chassis to
link
sway
on
bar.
the diff. Yeah, okay. It just
Yeah.
depends on where you
I'll
can,
put a
where you
photo
can do
up.
it.
So everyone can see.
And then it's really just a matter of making sure, get some measurements of your open coilover and bypass.
Yep.
I think on my particular car, I've got one of them, it'll be the bypass that's slightly shorter, so it would theoretically pull up first in full open, then the coilover.
Yeah.
But then I set the limiting strap so both of them don't go
Yeah,
to that,
don't
that
go to that
distance.
full
Yeah, if I
open.
took the strap off, then it would be my coilover would be the longest.
But we've got plenty of
Yeah, but there's no really right wrong there. As long as at full down travel, your strap's going to catch it
Exactly. Yeah.
before
Yep.
it does that damage. So yeah, that gives you a bit of an idea, I guess, with coilovers, bypass. Like coilovers, when you're setting your car up with coilovers, whether you got any idea what your weights are or whatever, you can basically just say, I'm going to buy a coilover. Say you've worked out where you're going to mount it. We know it's a 16-inch coilover or whatever.
Yeah.
If you got a bit of an idea where you're going to be with coils, you put them in the vehicle. When it's completely built, fueled up, ready to go, like 2 people sitting in the thing, all geared up, and then you can get some measurements of where this thing's sitting in height
Yeah.
and how much your coils are compressed. From that point, then you can calculate out what
Yeah.
the coil should
We
be,
can-
because chances are you're going to be sitting high or low
Yeah.
that first time you try it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
Yep.
you can adjust preload with the coilover,
Yeah,
but
you've
to a
got-
point. You can't
yeah.
just keep cranking that.
Yeah. Exactly.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so
that's
many,
where-
with your coilovers, there's so many different ways you can do setups, whether it hits your second rate adjusters or,
Yeah.
or you're running a single coil or a dual rate coil, and
Or run
whether you got a really light top coil, you could have a keeper coil at the top,
Yeah.
like
And
massive. Mine are like, I think I got 600 pound lowers, and I think might be 400 uppers.
Yeah.
I thought yours was
like a lot of light-
6'6". Like yours is pretty heavy in the rear end.
Yeah, I got a lot of weight.
So that'll be what's the combined rate of that 300 pound?
Yeah,
Is-
Yeah,
give
I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, because you've got, like in like a Suzuki, if you put a coilover in, you might be 100 over 150 or 150 over 200, like 50 pound like transition rate. But the bigger and heavier the cars get, like a Patrol, 100 pound,
There's no point
150 pounds,
no
not.
point me having a light top coil
Makes
because
no
it's just going to be fully compressed.
blows
Yeah,
through.
Yeah,
You're
I'm-
talking
I'm-
a 600 bottom.
I'm 250 over 350, and my car's nowhere near built.
100 pounds probably a pretty good transfer for a Patrol.
And like I would say that I'm probably still light. By the time I get it all built, that top coil won't be doing much.
That front or rear.
Both. Yeah, that's just what coils.
But we'll
had at
calculate
the
it.
time. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
like I
pretty,
said.
pretty endless. Like what I'd probably suggest if you're up in Queensland and you're going to set up a race vehicle or something, talk to Mitch Thorpe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
at
all.
Old Off Road. And he deals with the different brands. He deals with Pro Fender and he's King's Fox. He deals with all of it, so
Like
he can send you in the right direction.
We obviously sell the Pro Fender stuff and we use it, and we're half of us are building and racing stupid things, but as a business, that's primarily what Mitch focuses on, is the tuning and setting up of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So that you might as well go there. you're going to go to an engine tuner and get a tune. You're not going to go back to General Motors and go, tune my LS for me.
Yeah,
No, you just go to an engine builder. So same thing, just that's a business that deals, and his experience is pretty vast too.
I think he's over the south side of Brisbane
He's
somewhere.
south side, yeah, I can't remember. Maybe Loganholme, I think he is. But yeah, and that's the thing, like that's what, you walk into Mitch's shop and he's got I think he's got two
He's
eyes.
been racing with us for years.
Forever.
Oh, yeah, I
Been
remember.
rolling over with us for
He's
years.
been WA with some of the great suspension guys over there.
Yeah,
America.
He's raced in America. But like, I remember Mitch riding pushies at Black Duck Valley. And remember the big pit at Black Duck years ago? I remember Mitch riding pushies in there when his old man was competing in the old Avanti Patrol. Like, so yeah, Mitch is
tough truck era.
Yeah, like Mitch still and that and Brett and that have been around a very, very long time.
We might actually try and get him in for a bit of a podcast.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely
Have a bit of a
think that'd be a
rundown
good idea.
on suspension and what he's doing and all that sort of stuff.
But as you can see, guys, we do everything at Superior Engineering, from your day-to-day tourers, daily cars that you're towing your tools with, anything like that for travelling Australia, all the way to full-blown race cars. Now, if there's any questions that you guys want to know further or just have for us in the business or anything like that, make sure you drop them in the below comments, or even jump over to our Facebook and flick us a quick message. But that is enough from us. You'll find this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, but we'll catch up with you guys on the next episode where we may have some killer guests.